Hi everyone, how are you? Before we jump into today's episode, I just have a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Firstly, just a reminder about our event that we're having at the Satara showroom here in Sydney on Thursday, the 19th of September. It is a live recording of the Design Dialogues podcast, and I am going to be joined by Rhys-Jones, Lynne Bradley, and Gemma Gillett. These three have been some of my favourite interviews, and I am really looking forward to getting to chat to these designers again. I will put the link to pick up your free tickets in the show notes, and I really hope you can join us. The other thing that I wanted to mention was I've had lots of really lovely feedback from listeners to the podcast and also other people through social media asking how we can work together and I can help them with their systems and processes in their business. I have listened to the requests and I have put together 2 new ways that you're going to be able to work with me. So one is coming and I will let you know a little bit about that soon. But right now we have what I am calling the Systems and Processes Health Check. This is going to be where we work together for 8 weeks and we look at a key part of your business that you know is just not working properly. And we finesse and we review, and it's your chance to get my general manager and studio owner brain looking over a key part of your business. So if this is something that you would be interested in, I'd love to chat to you a little bit more about it. And you can find out some more information about it through the link that I will also pop in the show notes for today. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Or that you actually just want to work 3 days a week because you want to be able to see your friends and play tennis or whatever it is kind of thing.
And that's fine. Yeah.
It is. It's really
because
fine.
Maybe that's why you got out of the 9 to 5, because you don't want to work the 9 to 5. And very often you realise in self-employment that you can earn the same money in 3 days or 4 days. Yeah. And so why would you kill yourself? Why wouldn't you have a 3-day weekend? You know, if that's absolutely, wouldn't that be your idea of success?
Totally.
And yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like it's like you don't. That's not the only reason you need to work part time. You could take a day off just to have a day off.
Exactly.
Because you know, you created a business that allowed you to do that. So you know, go and do a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. Or something. Oh, time for a hobby, wouldn't that be cool?
I know. I don't know what they are, but yeah, sounds good in theory.
It does. Hi, I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and your host of the Design Dialogues podcast. I've been a designer for the last 12 years and I've run my own studio for 5. And I know how hard it is to run a successful business. You not only need to be great at designing, but you need to be great at all the other things as well. I created More Time to Design, a software platform to help designers run efficient studios, and I've created the Design Dialogue podcast to help us all learn together. Each week, we will meet professionals who are at the top of their game doing things that help us run our studios. We'll have conversations with social media managers, interior design mentors, copywriters, stylists, photographers, suppliers, and also designers who have been in the game for a long time and who have such a wealth of knowledge to share. I hope that each week you feel inspired and informed at the end of each of our design dialogues. So join me for the Design Dialogue podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues podcast. And this week I am joined by Jen Bishop from The Interiors Addict. Hi Jen.
Hi Beth. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, this is a podcast of 2 working mums. We have juggled and moved this interview around so many times between sick children and life. So it is an absolute pleasure to actually record this today with you.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Yes. And get it all done before school pickup.
Yeah, exactly. So I always love by starting by finding out what you can see out your window today.
Out of my work from home office window, I can see the backyard, which is actually always really lovely. Only slightly ruined by the huge, great trampoline, which is real life.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about interiors addict. I know so many people listening to this will be familiar with what you do and the platform, but tell me a little bit about how you got started with it all.
So my background is as a journalist, trained as a journalist in England and worked on local newspapers and variety of magazines, with quite a bit of a niche into like policing and crime, which is very far from what I write about now. And then I moved over here to Sydney in 2008 for a year, and that was 16 years ago, which happens to a lot of POMs apparently. And I have always just loved interiors, never thought to do it for a job or have anything to, write, even weirdly never even crossed my mind to like apply for jobs on home magazines. But I moved over here and got a job as editor of a business magazine. Did that for 5 years, and it wasn't, the most exciting of topics, but it was, my first job in Australia. I had a really great bunch of colleagues who are still friends of mine now. And I don't know, a few years into that, I just started this Tumblr as a way of keeping together all the interior stuff that I was just increasingly collecting bits of inspiration. And it was before Pinterest was a big thing. I guess if Pinterest had been a big thing, I would have just done that. It just became, I can't even pinpoint at what point it went from something that was just for me to something that became for everyone. But I just got really into it and spent a lot of time on it. Had a lot more free time then because I had no kids. And because I was a journalist, I guess it was just in my nature to approach people and ask them, would you like to be interviewed for my blog?
Yeah.
Went straight to the top, went straight for people like Greg Natali.
Yeah.
And then I guess because I featured a few people like that, other people got wind of it. I thought, well, if Greg Natali's been on it, maybe I should be on it. People started, then something changed and people were pitching me. I was like, this is amazing. Anyway, I don't know. I poured a lot of love into it for no money, but I just suddenly had this great fun side hustle that wasn't a business, going to design events and meeting interesting people and being in this world of design, but having a day job as well.
Yeah.
And and then one day I got made redundant from my day job. And the long story short is that was what gave me the push to really have a go at turning the blog into a business. At the time, I didn't really think that was viable. But I guess I had a lot of entrepreneur contacts by that point who said, this has got wheels, you should give it a go. And I thought, well, I'll give it 6 months. And I had a payout. I'd been at that job for 5 years. And the rest, as they say, is history.
And so obviously your background in publishing kind of most probably helped you see how you could turn a blog into a business more than, the average person could. But it's not a very traditional business model in a lot of ways. What were some of the things that you tried that made you go, okay, we can make money out of this?
I think it was, to start with, it was really people contacting me and saying, can we advertise? And I was like, oh, crap, I better make that possible. And that was one of the first things I had to do, was to transfer everything over to WordPress so that I actually did own my platform and had my own URL. And the fact that the interest was there, and then I had to very quickly work out, well, what am I going to sell? How much is it going to cost? Plucking figures out of the air to start with. Doing bits and pieces of freelance writing on the side and everything, because you don't suddenly generate enough income.
No.
Or a comparable income. It really evolved very organically. And I guess as the numbers grew, I could charge more and that kind of thing. And before you knew it, this was just the way life was. And just carried on, really.
Yeah, so owning your own business was never in your life plan?
Never, ever. To be honest, I just didn't think that I was that kind of person. Like I knew that I was unusual as a journalist in that I had quite a commercial way of thinking, and that I could see how you could monetize things within publishing without completely selling out, and while still having, you know, editorial that was valuable and entertaining and all those kind of things. But in terms of being self-employed, that just had never ever crossed my mind. I liked being a senior employee. I liked, you know, being senior and having a say in a lot of things, but not having that responsibility. The buck didn't stop with me. It was someone else's problem. Tax,
and still getting a regular paycheck, kind of
payroll, exactly, and getting that same paycheck every month and not having to worry about it. So, it was never ever something I aspired to be my own boss. But now that I am, I just don't think I could ever go back, ever. So that's what keeps me going in the tough times. It's like this, I don't want to have to go and get a job for someone else.
Yeah. And then it's really interesting that you say you had people approach you, because I think so often designers they kind of feel like they have to be asked if they want exposure for one of their projects or something. And I'm always amazed by how many people I talk to who, like yourself or magazine editors, and they're like, we love it when people come to us because we're always looking for content. Like, you're making our job easier if you come to us. So is that something you would say to designers, like, don't be afraid to reach out?
Definitely. And, I've spoken about this a number of times, or asked to speak about this at various events. And absolutely, giving a journalist or a publication a great story with great photographs is absolutely doing them a favor. So I think, designers can get stuck in this sort of us and them, like the media are the gatekeepers. They're not going to say, they're going to say no, or they're too busy to speak to me, or I'm not important enough, or I haven't been doing this long enough, and going round and round in circles of self-doubt. But actually, you could just send a link to the Dropbox and the journalist might be like, wow, this is really cool. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's content my readers will love. And so that's a bonus for me, and we're helping each other. So I think that's a mindset thing that people could, employ when they're feeling a bit nervous about approaching media, is that you're actually helping each other. So by all means, and publications are generally not looking to the designers to be the ones that pay them. We're looking to the brands and the furniture companies and the paint companies. They're the people that sponsor us and book advertising and that kind of thing. The interior designers, they're the people that we are looking to for really great content. So and we're very happy to take it.
And I think one of the things that I've found interesting through talking to different people, it's like sometimes you never know what they'll be looking for. And so you can send something off and they might be like, this is fills the hole that I was looking for. And it turns around in, like, you're in next month's article, like magazine or something. Or then they might sit on it for 12 months and then actually it's like, this is the perfect thing. Like, so much of it as well is not necessarily that there's something wrong with your project or that it's not good enough or anything like that. So much of it has to do with all of, like, the whole ecosystem of the magazine.
It really does. And as well, especially with print magazines, because they're working on such long lead times, a lot of it is to do with timing and did you make that deadline? And if you didn't, perhaps there's not an option for that to feature in that section for another 2 months. It's a lot different if you're pitching an online publication like mine, because I'd be like, oh yeah, great, I'll run that next week. Or we have something coming up tomorrow. It's very different. Sometimes it is like someone literally pitched me something yesterday. I went back to her this morning and I said, yep, I love this. I just need your photos bigger. I'm going to run this today. She got back to me within an hour with the bigger photographs and it's now on the homepage. So sometimes it really does happen that easily and that quick.
Yeah. And that's amazing. I love that about online. I think that's something that, that instant nature of it, which is really
definitely amazing. After years of working in print for me as well, that's it's such a joy to be able to be so nimble and publish things so quickly. And if you make a mistake, change it straight away, which you do that in a magazine. Yeah, there's no going back. So it's very liberating.
And when someone's pitching to you, is the story as much as important as the imagery?
Oh, look, if the imagery is great, it doesn't really matter so much about the story. But yeah, it's sometimes if the imagery isn't so great, or is a bit average, sometimes a good hook can be enough to get that across the line. So it is a combination of the two. If your pictures aren't amazing, you're probably going to have a better, stronger hook or angle. Yeah.
And it's really interesting, that kind of thing. Like, I think so many designers, especially when they're starting out, they're like, oh, the investment into photography it can be a big hurdle kind of thing. But I think photos, that you can just get so much out of them kind of thing. So I think, invest in the best photographer that you can.
I think that's what people need to remember is do spend the money. It absolutely is worth it. But once you've got those images, to not just pitch them to a magazine and that's it. Like, use them everywhere you can use them in your brochures, use them on your homepage, stick them in your email signature, leverage them to death.
Exactly. And I think
and then you're like, actually, that was a bargain.
Totally. And just because you had a project photographed 4 years ago does not mean that you can't bring those images back out again, because it's a new audience that you're talking to.
Nobody really cares. I'd actually, when I get pitched a project, do I ever ask, when was this? No. I might ask, has it been anywhere else? But if it's good and it looks current, then it doesn't actually matter, because you're featuring it on its merits, not because it was last month or last year.
And I mean,
they usually are, but they usually are relatively recent, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing for designers to hear, because I think so often you see projects and your first couple of projects might not be your best projects, because you learn and you go along, but they're still really beautiful, but you most probably didn't have the confidence to put them out there, or you're like, I don't have enough. Like, it's just, this is my first project and I want more collab. Like, I want a bigger body of work kind of thing.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes going back and looking, could I repitch that, or could I send it out into the world?
For sure. Or could you just take out the best room from that project? Like, has it got a really strong bathroom or a strong ensuite? And you could pitch that to a kitchens magazine specifically, or into a section of a certain magazine. I mean, that's the other thing. If you photographed a home and you feel it's not super strong as a whole, just don't send the average ones. Don't send the okay rooms. Just send the killer shots, and even just the best shots of the best room.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to.
So many things. It's smoke and mirrors. Like, people don't
Absolutely
need to know the full story.
Yeah, that's so true.
So you run a really dynamic business, like, as we've said, like, it's not really a traditional business that a lot of people would know, oh, well, how do you make money out of that? So you have advertising and you have people pitching to you, you do speaking gigs, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of moving parts in your business.
Yes.
What are some of the systems and processes you use that help you do that?
I think one of the biggest systems I have is around making sure I get paid. Because when you are, when there are a lot of moving pieces, and and it's not just the moving pieces of a business, it's the moving pieces of being a working mum, being the person that does pick up every day. There's a lot of life admin in your head as well as work admin. And I have, there's a few ways that I keep kind of organized on that front. And I have an assistant who does all of the invoicing and all of the chasing of invoices. And we tend to, we try and make it so that all our invoices are due at the end of the month. So that's just one time of the month where Jodie goes and sees, asks me, have they paid yet? If they haven't paid, she's onto them. It's her job. And as well as the fact that it's nice to separate the chasing money from the other parts. It's awkward.
I was going to ask about that, because that's something so often, like, I've heard people, they set up like a separate email and there's their kind of like accounts email, and it's like, it's still there, because that can be awkward and it can be kind of challenging. Is that something that you did purposefully, like we're like, I'm not going to do that role, I want to have someone to help me in the business that does that? Or is it something that kind of just organically evolved?
I think once upon a time I had an agency that used to sell my ads for me on a commission basis. So they used to do all of that as a matter of course. And when I brought that in-house, I definitely didn't want to be doing that part of it. And that also coincided, I think, with the time that I decided I needed an assistant she's a virtual assistant, and she's in country Victoria.
Yeah.
And I really nutted out, what do I need to be outsourcing? What am I wasting time on that I could be doing more? You know, everyone said if you can be earning more money doing something else in that time, you should be doing that and paying someone else to do that sort of stuff. So, or things that you really don't like. So that was, it was like something I really don't like and something that could be done by an admin type role. But also it was also important to me that it was the right kind of person. And Jodie's worked with me for 6 years. So repeat clients know Jodie. Yeah. I know that she is very determined in getting me paid, but also very polite and personable and all of those kind of things. So I think it's important the person chasing your money is the right person. And it's just something that keeps me organized, you know. So I always know I can check in when my head is full of another million things. I can check in and say, how much money am I owed at the end of this month? Or how much is coming in? Or have they signed this booking form and someone else has that? If I had to be going in and out of Dropbox, looking at who's done this and that, I would become so disorganized. So it's really nice to just take that out of my brain. And it's really been, I know people use virtual assistants for a lot of different things, but I think that's something a lot of people have perhaps not thought of, which is super, super useful.
Yeah, I think so many things like that you just said resonated. Like I think being super clear, like when you do decide to take someone on, being super clear around, well, actually it's not just handing over tasks to them, but it's actually being clear about what tasks will help you do more. That's really the point of an assistant or someone. And so being really clear on that, I think, is crucial. But then I also think being clear on the bits that you don't like. So like all people, if you don't like doing something, you're going to procrastinate. It's going to take longer. Like it's just not great. So I think being really self-aware of going, actually, I don't like that kind of thing. And I think that having someone who kind of does keep that, keeping track of the financials and that kind of backwards and forwards and approvals and stuff like that, that's so time consuming on whatever type of business you work on. So kind of
it is. Handing
that over to someone else is really clever, and I can imagine it really does free up your time.
It does, and it isn't just the time, it's the time and the brain space. It's the extra, it's the not having to think about it that lets you be open to bigger picture stuff, and just not going to bed worrying, have I forgotten something? Have I invoiced them? It's just done. So I would be lost without Jodie. And she does other things as well. You know, she puts together the newsletter and things like that. And I think when you've worked with someone for years, it's really nice because you just kind of almost know what each other's thinking. You don't have to give a big brief about things. You know, she knows she can WhatsApp me and say, hello, it's Friday, where's the newsletter stuff for Sunday, which she did about an hour ago. And it's just like, sorry, like I feel sometimes she's like my work mum. She's going to love this. Nagging me or telling me off, but it's like, it's okay. I've told you, please do nag me. That's fine. I need it.
Exactly. And I think that's really interesting, that thought around like the mental load and like just checking out of something. We're both working mums with small children. Our days are dictated by school hours, which is the shortest 5 hours I've ever known. Like it's
Isn't it just?
But I think, and I'm sure so many parents will relate to this, like there is just so much stuff to think about, that having someone who you can kind of know, okay, that I just don't need to think about, is such an amazing thing to do to your business. Like, it really does in a lot of ways supercharge your business, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And is that something that when you first took on your assistant, did that play into it as well? Like, how is this going to help me in terms of like family life and juggling it all? Like, you know, that interaction between like the very blurred lines of work
Yeah.
and family when you do work for yourself?
I think something that I always used to think of in the earlier days before, so my kids are both in school now. My youngest just started kindy this year. But before school, before they're both at school, I feel like that's a more hectic and disorganized and kids in different places kind of time. And I used to always try and think to myself, okay, I need to get this much work done. I need this much time. I need to look at, there's two ways I can do this. I can spend my money on childcare help or home help, or I can spend my money on business help. And I think that's something I would encourage working mums to think about as well, because it's almost like you're looking at two budgets. You're looking at your personal finances and your business finances, because your daycare is going to come out of your personal pocket, but is that going to enable you to earn more money? Or would you rather have your kids at home more, if that works, but pay someone else to do more of your work? And it's a ever-changing balancing act, and for me that's changed across the years. It's changed a lot from having part-time nannies when my kids were very young. Neither of them went to daycare until they were about 2.5, and I preferred to have them at home but with somebody else doing the nappy changing and the you know, but still being able to see them, because that was a privileged position I could choose for myself. But you know, obviously costs a bit more than daycare and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's important to consider your whole family situation, how much your husband is working, how much they are doing different you know, for example, my husband very much is across all of our personal finances, not because I can't do that stuff or because I'm a 50s housewife, but because I've got business finances in my head. That's enough. So he can do that fine, you know, I'm across it, but I can't have two lots of budgeting and ins and outs in my head. So I think you have to be realistic that your home situation, your personal financial situation is very involved in in how you work as especially as a parent, and to kind of consider it all as a big picture, not like, well, I'm earning this much, so we spend this much on childcare. It's like, and I think people talk about that a lot now. It's not about, is it worth mum working to earn this much when childcare costs this much? Well, no, because it's not directly one versus the other, because there's two people. Usually there's two parents in the situation. So
it's so interesting. So my youngest child, like next year is her last year before school, and we're in this discussion at the moment where, you know, we've got a combination of preschool, daycare, nannies this year kind of thing, and it's great. But you know, kind of thinking, do I want to spend some time with her before she goes to school? And it's very much a discussion around it's not so black and white. There's you know, it's very organic. And you know, like that whole time since I've had, you know, I started my design studio when my eldest was 6 months old. So the whole time it's been this flow of, you know, where does childcare and nannies and family and work and cleaners and
it always changes. It constantly changes, doesn't it? And then I think it levels out somewhat when your child starts school, or when both or all of your children, depending on how many you have, are in the same place. It's a very different, it gets a lot more streamlined at that point.
And I think that's a really interesting place for people who are just starting out their studios as well. So you know, there is limitations around how much you can work as a parent. Like, you know, you can you know, and you know, there'd be days where before kids you'd just work and you'd work and you'd work, and then you'd kind of stop, and then you'd work a bit more. You know, it just doesn't happen. And I think that can be quite a challenge for people when they first start their studio. They're trying to grow and they're trying to build, but they've got small children and there's these limitations. And it's kind of like, I think something that I've really seen designers do really well is like, if you work out what success means for you. So like obviously for you in those early years, success was being able to have the kids at home and being able to earn enough and to allow that to happen. If you are clear on what success means for you, then having that, seeing that maybe the studio is not growing at the speed you want it to, or it just kind of helps you put it all in perspective, I think, a bit, kind of thing. Like,
it does. And I think there's a lot of people out there always saying, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
What are you doing next? And it's like, actually, I'm quite fine just doing this for now. And I think there's definitely been times over the years that it's been, I'm okay to just break even right now and to be able to be with my kids this much time.
Yep.
I don't need to be growing at this time. I just need to be comfortably paying my salary, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right, and you can get very sucked into every year I must make more money, or no, every year could be very different. And I know exactly what you mean about that last year before school, because you do feel this kind of this slipping away. I feel guilty. I want to spend the time with them.
Is setting in.
This is the last time I can do that. This is the last time I can have mummy day on a Wednesday. And like, I get it. I really get it. And you know, they're only young once and you'll never have this time again. And so it is you can't expect that that's the year that you're going to grow your business and not feel guilty, you know, and spend the time. It's just, you know, you have to be realistic, and that's it. Success will be different at different stages of the journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so often as well, I think the designers that I see do this really well. It's that they're very clear on what success means, but it's not just that they're clear on what success means. They're also very good at going, okay, have I got everything set up in a way that's going to allow me to be successful? You know, so they might have that they want to get a project published, but they also want to only work 4 days a week so that they can spend time with their kids, or they want to finish at 2:30 so they can do pickup and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then they don't have the back end of their business humming along in a way that's going to allow them to achieve that. So even though they've got these truncated work hours, their systems are such a mess that they spend more time doing stuff that they shouldn't. So I think that's always a really interesting dynamic. And I just think, I think working mums, it's such a unique phase of life.
It really is. But I also think, and this is something I'm really big on, that you shouldn't apologize for the fact that you want to work part-time, that you have boundaries around your time.
No.
Some people, I feel it's like they kind of want to pretend they don't have children because that's going to look unprofessional, or to pretend that, you know, my kid's at home, I can't do this meeting. It's like, you know what, nearly the whole world has kids and they know the reality, and you don't need to pretend that you don't have them. And if you work 3 days a week, you know, own it, put it on your email signature, have your out of office set up that you don't work Fridays. I used to always, when I had my mummy days before Charlie started school, I would put it on my out of office. You know, I'm doing my other job today with my 4-year-old boss, and you know, that's reality. That's
totally.
You know, don't expect to hear from me, but I'll get back to you on Monday. So it's like, that's okay. I don't think we need to try and pretend anymore that we're not doing the juggle, because everyone is doing the juggle.
Oh, totally. And I think as well, like, I think it also applies. It doesn't just have to be kids. It could be that you have caring responsibilities for older parents, or
which is an increasing thing, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Or that you actually just want to work 3 days a week because you want to be able to see your friends and play tennis or whatever it is, kind of thing. Like,
and that's fine.
It is. It's really fine.
Because maybe that's why you got out of the 9 to 5, because you don't want to work the 9 to 5. And very often you realize in self-employment that you can earn the same money in 3 days or 4 days.
Yeah.
And so why would you kill yourself? Why wouldn't you have a 3-day weekend? You know, if that's absolutely, wouldn't that be your idea of success?
Totally.
And it's funny, isn't it? Like, it's like that's not the only reason you need to work part-time. You could take a day off just to have a day off.
Exactly.
Because, you created a business that allowed you to do that. So, go and do a hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something.
Time for a hobby. Wouldn't that be cool?
I know. I don't know what they are, but yeah, it sounds good in theory.
It does. So what would be some advice you'd give to designers who are maybe, let's say, in their first 3 to 5 years at their studio, and they're kind of like getting their feet and they're thinking about, growing their studio and getting published and all that kind of stuff? Like, I know we talked about it before briefly, but what are kind of like some bullet points that you would give them in terms of when you are pitching to a publication, what they should look at?
There's a few sort of key things. One is making sure you're pitching the right kind of project. So to have done your homework to know that this is the sort of home they feature. To have photographs, you really do need to have good professional photographs. They don't have to be with the best photographer that cost a fortune, but they should probably be professional. Be really easy to deal with and really available. I think, if you're the person that picks up the phone, that gets back to the email within 5 minutes, that can get them exactly what they want. When they say, do you think the homeowner would chat? They've got their number. They'll call them. They'll get back to you and say, yep, spoken to them. Here's their number. I've asked if I can pass it on. Yep. Be so easy to work with that they're not going to say no, because it's just, you've made their life easier and it's just a pleasure to deal with you, and you've handed it to them on a plate. I think they're probably the main things.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, that sounds like great advice. And what are you looking forward to in the next 12 months with Interiors Addict?
I've got a few things that I'm planning. I'm planning on launching a B2B newsletter, so that will be for people like your listeners who perhaps want to know about all the latest things from all the suppliers. Everyone always wants to know what's new in stone, what's new in carpets, what's new in all of these things. So I really want to try and bring all of that information together in one weekly, I'm not sure yet, email for for the trade, and really just much of the same. This is one of those stages where I am not looking to reinvent the wheel. And it's a tricky economy at the moment, so just surviving and hanging in there and keeping everything going is success for me at the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Jen, for joining me. I'm so glad we finally locked this in.
Me too. Got there in the end.
Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how more time to design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next design dialogue.